Welcome to Prism Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 132 of ASP.NET video tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss about reloading data into cache automatically when data in the underlying database table has changed. We will be building upon the example that we have discussed about in part 131 of the ASP.NET video tutorial. So please watch part 131 before proceeding with this video. So if you remember in part 131, when we click this button get data, we execute this command select star from TBL products, which is going to retrieve all the products from this table. And then we are going to load the products into this data set, which is then cached. And this data set is going to remain in cache as long as the table data has not changed. But the moment somebody updates this table, meaning if somebody changes the data in this table, at that point the data set will be removed from cache automatically. And that's because we have established this SQL cache dependency on that table. Okay, now when the data set is removed from the cache, we don't have that data cached anymore. So next time when the first user clicks get data, what's going to happen, this command has to be re-executed, and then we get the data again, and then we are going to cache that. Okay, and again this data set is going to stay in that cache as long as the data in that table has not changed. Okay, now look at this command select star from TBL products. This command is a pretty simple command, and if you look at the table here, it's a very small table with 4 rows. Obviously the query execution itself doesn't take really long time. So the user who connects to our application at the point where we don't have that item in the cache, this query is going to take a very less amount of time, so the user doesn't really notice any performance difference. But just imagine in real time the tables may have huge volumes of data, and the stored procedures that we write which get data may be a little complex, because of which the query processing time may be somewhere between 5 to 10 seconds depending on the complexity of the stored procedure. Okay, now let's say we have such a kind of a stored procedure whose execution takes somewhere around 5 seconds. Let's say we have something like this sp get products, but then we have used this wait for delay here to introduce some artificial query processing time. In reality we won't do this, but just assume to execute this stored procedure it's going to take 5 seconds. Okay, look at that. That's because we are using that wait for delay. And let's say I want to execute this stored procedure, retrieve the data, and then cache it. So instead of the select star from TBL products, I'm going to say let's use the stored procedure. So since we are using the stored procedure, we have to tell the command type is stored procedure. So da.select command type is equal to command type dot stored procedure. Okay, now look at this. When we run this now, obviously first time when we click get data, the stored procedure has to be executed because the data is not available in cache. So it's going to take 5 seconds. Look at that, it is still processing. Why? Because the stored procedure is taking that long time to execute that. But then after that, when I click that, since the data is available in cache, look at that, I get that within less than a second, because the query need not be reprocessed every time we click this button. But then keep in mind, when the data in the table changes for some reason, at the moment if you look at the name of the product, it is laptops, but then I'm going to update that to laptops 1. The moment we do that, and then when I click this button, what's going to happen, the cached data would have been removed, and look at that, it's taking a long time to process now because the stored procedure needs to be executed, and the stored procedure is going to take 5 seconds. Okay, so after that, when I click this button, the data will be loaded pretty fast because we already have that data set in the cache now. The stored procedure need not be executed. Okay, so the first time after the data set is removed from cache, the first time whoever connects to the application and clicks that button, the stored procedure needs to be executed because we don't have data in the cache. Now, don't you think it would be more beneficial even for that first user who connects to our application if we automatically load the data into cache when that cached data set is removed? Yeah, absolutely. Even that first user who tries to retrieve the data will not notice that performance difference. So obviously whenever a cached item is removed from cache, how do we detect that, and how do we load data automatically back into that cache? That's basically using cache item removed callback delegate. We discussed about this in part 130 of the ASP.NET video tutorial. Now it's actually very similar to that video. So if you haven't watched that, I would strongly encourage you to do so before continuing with the session. So let's see how to reload the data. So obviously, to do that, to load data automatically into cache, when cached data is removed, we need to define a callback method, and this callback method will be invoked when the respective cached item is removed. So the code to reload and recache data can be written in this method. But the most important thing to keep in mind is that the callback method signature should match with the signature of the cache item removed callback delegate. Okay, and the easiest way to do that is basically, so before I cache the data, I need to define that callback method, and I do that using cache item removed callback delegate. And if you look at the signature of this delegate, it's going to have a void return type, and it has 3 parameters. Now I want to define a method, the callback method, and the signature of that callback method should match with the signature of this delegate. So for that reason, I'm going to copy this and then paste it in my code behind file, and then I'm going to get rid of the delegate keyword and the semicolon there. So now I have a method here, and I'm going to call this cache item removed callback method. And in this method, I will define my logic to reload the data and recache that data set. And obviously, that's pretty simple to do. All I need to do is basically copy this piece of code which retrieves the data and cache it. Okay, so I'm going to specify that here. Okay, obviously, so we have this method. We'll come back to the implementation of this method in just a bit. For the time being, let me comment that. So now I need to create an instance of this delegate, because that's what I need to pass as an argument to this insert method of the cache object when we cache the data set. So let's go ahead and create an instance of this cache item removed callback delegate, and I'm going to call this cache item removed on cache item removed is equal to new cache item removed callback. And to this delegate, to the constructor of this delegate, we need to pass in a function name, which is nothing but our callback function name. Okay, and then finally, what we need to do, we need to pass this instance of the delegate as an argument to this insert method of the cache object. But however, if you look at the insert method right now, we are using an overloaded version that takes 3 parameters. But then if I want to pass this instance of this cache item removed callback delegate, I need to use an overloaded constructor that takes all the parameters. And we have a method which does that, an overloaded method which does that. So if you look at this one, this takes 7 parameters here. So let's go ahead and define all of them. So we have until SQL dependency we have defined. So absolute expiration, let's say I want to cache this data set for 24 hours. So I'm going to say datetime.now.add hours 24. And then since we are using absolute expiration, I'm going to specify for sliding expiration cache.noSliding expiration. And then the next parameter is the cache item priority. So I'm going to specify cache item priority.default and cache item removed callback delegate. So we need to pass an instance of this delegate. So I have that instance already there. So let's go ahead and pass that there. So now we hooked up everything that's required. So when we are caching this data set, okay, we are passing this instance of the delegate. And if you look at that delegate, whenever this cached item is removed, whenever this data set is removed from cache, this delegate is notified, and this delegate is actually pointing to this function. Okay, so that function will get executed automatically whenever the cached item is removed. So what do we need to do in that method? Here in this method, we are going to write the logic to reload data and recache it. So all I'm going to do is copy this piece of code and then paste it in that function, because this is the code that we want to have executed when the cache item is removed, because that code is going to reload and recache the data. So we are creating that connection string, connection object, SQL data adapter. It's going to execute that stored procedure and retrieve that data, and then it's going to recache that once again. Okay, alright, so let's build this solution. So those are the 3 things that we need to do: define your callback method, create an instance of the cached item removed callback delegate to the constructor, pass the name of that callback method, and finally when caching, pass that instance of that cache item removed callback delegate. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this now. So obviously the first time when we click this get data button, it's going to execute that stored procedure. So only at that point of time it's going to take 5 seconds. But after that, look at that, I retrieve data from cache. Now let's go ahead and update this one. Look at the moment it says laptops 1, and look at the message, data retrieved from cache. And then I'm going to update this data from laptops 1 to laptops. Okay, so the data is changed. Now what would have happened as the data is changed? SQL Server will notify .NET application. .NET application will remove that data set from cache. Now when the data set is removed from cache, obviously what's going to happen, this delegate gets invoked, because that delegate will be notified when the data set is removed, and that delegate is pointing to that function. And what is that function doing? That function is actually reloading that data once again. So this function will automatically reload that data. Okay, execute the stored procedure, which is going to take 5 seconds, and then after it has completed execution, it's going to reload that data. And now when the first user connects to your application after the cached item is removed, and then when he clicks this get data button, now the data would have been already loaded into cache, so I don't have to wait for the stored procedure to be executed. Look at that, when I click this button, look at that, at the moment we have laptops 1. Now when I click this button, it will be laptops, and I still get the data from cache. Okay, so I don't have to wait for that stored procedure to be executed, because the callback method has already been invoked when the initial data set that was cached was removed, because the data in the database has changed. Okay, so we use that callback method to automatically reload that data. On this slide you can find resources for ASP.NET, C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.